few months ago, I'm pretty sure I made a video about a large unknown 6 beachhead, the code name Bandlink at the end of the screen. Links in the description. Largely unknown, perhaps the best example of this video was forgotten. The first landings of June 6, 1944 didn't occur on any 5 beaches invasions: Omaha, Utah, Sword, Juno, or Gold. In fact, it was not the mainland of France to be the first Allied landings in French soil. By the sea on D-Day, Saint-Quentin, the considered of 2 islands off the coast of Normandy, posed the landing of Utah Beach. Throughout history, the island has been strategically infilled. The Emperor Napoleon first heavily fortified the islands, which have uninhabited by civilians. The main construction of the fort has large islands where 14 cannons and 500-man garrison later, and a white lighthouse was built on top of the fort. When the Germans occupied France of 1940, onto the islands, probably the part of the Atlantic Wall defenses, the certain of the Allied thought the German would demolish the lighthouse. Shortly after, they have taken the confusion of studying D-Day and the other site called Marveld. This is the German heavy battery established by Kriegsspeck, the sanctuary of the position of the mainland and further north and further south of the islands. When the Allies were pretending Operation Overlord, the landing plant of St. Grenouille's Island was figured out prominently. The Allies' intelligence believed that the old Napoleon fort has been configured to German observer post. And particularly, in 1944, a German troop garrison of a pretty large island, a pre-invasion photo of the landing area, intelligence soon to the Germans of the facility of island control, erratic was fired defense mines, and laid the siege of the hazard invasion of Omaha. The worst still seemed likely. The Germans have considered artilleries, and the bombings of the U.S. 4th Infantry came ashore in Utah. Although theoretically this beach of landings of beaches and commemorate the San Martin Islands was neutralized, the task of assigning and planning the troops of the U.S. 4th Cavalry Regiment, a difficult task to capture these islands within range of the large German guns of Kriegsspeck. The American landing force consisted of a platoon, each carrying 4th Cavalry and 24th Squadron, total of 132 armed men under the command of Lieutenant Colonel Easton Durnan's orders. The effective landing of 0430 hours of June 1944, 2 hours before the main landings, concerned the Utah Beach. However, the lights and the Allied intelligence was new and suspected by the Germans the presence of the islands, and the first assembly of the small reconnaissance detachment marked that the first beach landings of the guns of the commands of the 4 volunteer forwards. The party's commissioner, Kerbal Horth, and the corps of the cavalry Renaissance, the private and same corps of the Centurion, the John Troop B, and the foreman of the underwater demolition team. They traveled lightly armed only, with combat knives and training in England. They became competent with black rubber boats and stealthy silent integrations by night, potential hostiles to shore, and the tough including dropped out of the boat on the distance and swimming ashore. This only equipment, and carried the torches of sea signals and the main invasion colonel of the islands. Oslo and his commandants were working on 2 pairs of rubber boats, paddled towards the coast of a large island, paddling throughout heavy storms and the large sea mines. The Germans had sound and alarm until the judgment that became hundreds of yards of black coast, and Americans dropped cold into water. Their knives used to slash out the reflatable boats after swimming to beach They grounded themselves on the beach quietly with no movement ashore apart from the seabirds. But they were moved carefully, and the beach has been liberated and mined. Clearing the path using knives to the proximate sand, the Americans approached an old fort. No Germans, no secret fortifications, just mines and opposition, and abandoned German equipment. Oslo and his men had moved up to the beach and began sailing on the landing ship. Half dozen of such crafts were waiting to launch an invasion of Utah Beach. Within 30 minutes, or a small groups of landings, and made the assault team looks like so free, appeared to start the longest day of 132 men on the beach. The 4th Cavalry Division quickly secured both islands without resistance. However, the initial landings were unopposed, changing the relevancy of U.S. troops and the islands of the Germans' occupation posts. The battery marks of the German bunkers and naval coastlines, commanded by Horstpun, opposition, a free 120 Czech guns, 2 concrete placements, and it was one of the most powerful coastal batteries in the area, able to hit targets up to 19 miles or 30 kilometers away. The battery was the first on site of the Allied invasion, and at 5 a.m., 30 minutes after the Americans have successfully landed on Markov Islands, 5:22 a.m., the battery commenced firing on Allied shipping, targeting cruisers, the USS Tincon, that was battleship USS Navata. One of the guns also began landing shells on the sand material islands. The 4th Cavalry scrambled for cover, and several shells struck the islands, combination shells and landmines, killed 2 Americans and wounded 17. The German batteries then scored a direct hit on one of the destroyers of USS Cavalry, help providing fire support for the U.S. landing in Utah Beach. Was hit several times herself. She sank with 24 of their crew being dead and 64 wounded. The loss of water and the crew of its own reports of the sinking. Concrete battleship fired eventually knocked out 2 of its 3 guns. But it would take the U.S. ground forces until the 11th of June, 1944, before the battery was taken out. This is D-Day's Forgotten First Landing. Like and share, please. I'll put the other D-Day video in the link in the description. Bye!